Bam Bam Bigelow's death was no accident. You clicked on this video because you know something wasn't right about how one of wrestling's most talented big men died at just 45 years old. You were right to be curious. Scott Bigelow was supposed to be a wrestling legend. He had the size, the skill, and the fire tattoo that made him unforgettable. But his story isn't about glory. It's about how a man who could fly through the air like a superhero ended up dead, broke, and forgotten by the company that should have honored him. His death on January 19, 2007 wasn't just bad luck. It was the end result of years of addiction, money problems, and an industry that used him up and threw him away. By the time he died, Bam Bam was struggling with cocaine and prescription drugs. He was using cough syrup to fight off withdrawal symptoms. He owed thousands in child support. Debt collectors were chasing him so much that he had to keep moving from place to place. This wasn't how a wrestling pioneer should have lived his final years. Let's go back to where it all started to go wrong. Scott Charles Bigelow was born in Mount Laurel, New Jersey in 1961. Even as a kid, he was trouble waiting to happen. He went to Neptune High School where he played football and wrestled. He was actually pretty good at wrestling, placing third in the New Jersey State Tournament during his sophomore year in 1979. But then disaster struck. A cyst formed in his lower back, and it forced him to miss his entire senior season. That back injury would haunt him for the rest of his life, causing pain that would later drive him to seek relief in all the wrong places. After high school, Bam Bam didn't become a normal guy with a normal job. Instead, he chose dangerous work that matched his troubled personality. He became a bounty hunter, a bouncer, and a bodyguard. These weren't safe jobs, and they attracted the wrong kind of people. While working as a bounty hunter in Mexico, the worst possible thing happened. He got shot in the back by a criminal he was trying to capture. Then the Mexican authorities threw him in prison for 6 months in Mexico City. Imagine being stuck in a foreign jail, injured and alone, not knowing if you'll ever get out. This was before he even became a wrestler. His life was already violent, dangerous, and unstable. Most people would have learned from this experience and tried to find a safer path, but not Bam Bam. When he finally got out of that Mexican prison, he said there wasn't much else he was qualified for except wrestling. Think about that. He saw himself as someone who was only good for violence and entertainment. That's a sad way to view your own life. When he got out of jail, Bam Bam decided to try wrestling. He said there wasn't much else he was good at. That tells you something about how he saw himself. He didn't dream of being a wrestling star. He just needed work, and wrestling seemed like the only thing left. He started training at Larry Sharp's Monster Factory in 1985. His trainer called him a prize student, but even his early success came with problems. Bam Bam was so reckless that he got disqualified for doing moves that were too dangerous. He won his first championship in 1986 and was named Rookie of the Year, but winning awards as a rookie also made other wrestlers jealous and angry. When he got to the WWF in May 1987, they created a whole storyline called the Battle for Bam Bam. All the top managers in the company wanted to sign him, including Jimmy Hart, Bobby Heenan, and Slick. This was actually a huge honor that most wrestlers never get. They even had him team up with Hulk Hogan, the biggest star in wrestling. He was in the first ever Survivor Series match in November 1987. Everything looked perfect on paper, but this success came with a terrible cost. Other wrestlers in the locker room were furious that a rookie was getting such special treatment. They had been working for years to get the kind of push that Bam Bam got right away. The jealousy and resentment were so thick you could cut it with a knife. Veterans who had paid their dues felt like management was slapping them in the face by pushing this newcomer ahead of them. This toxic environment, combined with serious injuries to both of his knees, forced him to leave the WWF after just over a year. He had torn both of his anterior cruciate ligaments, which are crucial for the kind of athletic moves he was doing. But the real damage wasn't just physical. The backstage politics had shown him that talent alone wasn't enough in wrestling. You also had to navigate a world of petty jealousies and fragile egos. For someone who was already mentally unstable from his rough background, this was devastating. This pattern would follow Bam Bam his whole career. He was too good too fast, and it made people hate him. His talent became a curse because it threatened everyone else. After leaving WWF the first time, he went to Jim Crockett Promotions, which was becoming World Championship Wrestling. He even got to challenge the legendary Ric Flair for the World Heavyweight Championship. Then he went to New Japan Pro Wrestling, where he formed a successful tag team with Big Van Vader. In March 1992, they actually won the IWGP Tag Team Championship by defeating top Japanese stars. This proved that his talent was real and could succeed anywhere in the world. But here's the problem with all this success. Bam Bam could never stay in one place long enough to really build something lasting. He was constantly moving from company to company, always starting over, never able to create the kind of stability that leads to long-term success. He wouldn't sign exclusive contracts because he wanted to keep his options open. This might have seemed smart at the time, but it meant he never became the face of any one promotion. He was always a visitor, never truly at home anywhere. This instability in his wrestling career was a warning sign of what would happen in his personal life later. People who can't commit to one place or one company often have the same problem with relationships and financial responsibility. The seeds of his future problems were already being planted during what should have been the best years of his career. The biggest moment of his career was also his biggest disaster. At WrestleMania 11, Bam Bam got to main event against NFL star Lawrence Taylor. This should have made him a huge star. Instead, it destroyed his credibility. He lost to someone who wasn't even a real wrestler. The whole match was designed to get publicity for WWE, not to make Bam Bam look good. He was used as a prop in his own main event. Think about that. The biggest match of your career, and you're just there to make someone else look good. You lose to a football player who learned to wrestle in a few weeks. That kind of humiliation stays with you. It tells you that the company doesn't really respect you. You're just a tool to them. After that embarrassment, Bam Bam found new life in ECW. This hardcore wrestling company appreciated his talent. He won their world championship and had amazing matches with wrestlers like Taz. His match with Taz, where they crashed through the ring, became legendary. Finally, people were treating him like the star he should have been all along. But even his ECW success came with a dark side that nobody wanted to talk about. This was when his drug use really started to spiral out of control. The hardcore wrestling style that made ECW famous meant taking more punishment than normal wrestling. More pain meant needing more ways to cope with that pain. Prescription painkillers became a regular part of life for many ECW wrestlers, and Bam Bam was no exception. The company culture at ECW was different from the corporate WWE. They celebrated being rebels and outcasts, but that rebellious attitude extended to drug use too. There wasn't the same level of oversight or concern about wrestler wellness. If you could perform, nobody asked too many questions about how you were managing the pain between shows. Bam Bam's championship runs in ECW should have been the highlight of his career, but they were actually the beginning of his downward spiral into serious addiction. The irony is heartbreaking. Just when he was finally getting the respect and recognition he deserved as a performer, he was destroying his life with substances that would eventually kill him. He finished his career in WCW as part of the Jersey Triad. By then, he was just another guy. The fire was gone. His last match was on the final episode of Monday Nitro. It was fitting that his career ended when WCW died. Both were shadows of what they used to be. The years after wrestling were when everything completely fell apart in the most tragic way possible. Bam Bam tried to run a restaurant business, probably thinking he could use his wrestling fame to attract customers. But the restaurant failed miserably, leaving him with even more debt. He owed money to creditors everywhere he went. His ex-wives were constantly taking him to court for unpaid child support. The man who once main evented WrestleMania was now running from debt collectors like a common criminal. But the debt was just the surface of much deeper problems. His addiction had taken complete control of his life. He was using cocaine regularly, which is an expensive habit that can quickly drain anyone's bank account. The prescription painkiller addiction that started during his wrestling career had grown into a monster that demanded more and more drugs to satisfy. When he couldn't get his regular supply of pills, he would drink bottles of cough syrup containing dextromethorphan to try to stop the awful withdrawal symptoms. This is what happens to desperate addicts when they can't get their preferred drugs. They'll use anything that might help them feel normal again, even if it's dangerous and pathetic. Imagine a former wrestling superstar sneaking around pharmacies buying cough medicine like some kind of junkie. That's how far Bam Bam had fallen from his days of glory. The moving from place to place wasn't just about avoiding debt collectors. It was also about trying to stay ahead of his problems, both legal and personal. When you owe money everywhere, and you're known in the local wrestling community, it becomes impossible to start fresh. So you pack up and move to another town, hoping things will be different there. But they never are, because you're taking all your problems with you. On January 19, 2007, Scott Bigelow was found dead in his home. The official cause was a drug overdose. He had cocaine, prescription drugs, and cough suppressant in his system. He was 45 years old. He died alone, broke, and forgotten by the wrestling world. But here's what makes his death even more tragic. Some people have tried to make his story even worse by spreading false rumors about legal troubles. They've confused him with other people who had the same name. The real Bam Bam Bigelow was never convicted of the serious crimes that some internet rumors claim. He had his problems, but people have made them sound worse than they were. Even in death, he couldn't catch a break. The wrestling industry that should have taken care of him instead abandoned him. WWE, the company that made millions off his talent, has never put him in their Hall of Fame. They say it's because he never won their top championship. But the real reason might be that he spoke out too much about the dark side of wrestling. He talked about drug use and backstage politics. Companies don't like wrestlers who tell the truth about ugly things. WWE would rather pretend that wrestlers like Bam Bam don't exist. They want to honor the pretty success stories, not the cautionary tales. They don't want to admit that their business destroyed a man who gave them everything. What makes this even sadder is that Bam Bam was actually a hero outside the ring. He once saved children from a house fire and got badly burned doing it. While WWE won't honor him, he literally risked his life to save kids. He was a real hero, not just a pretend one on TV. His fellow wrestlers remember him as kind and funny. Paul Heyman called him a prodigy with raw talent like no one had seen before. Ted DiBiase said he was a likable guy who cared about his family. Jake Roberts called him a great person to be around. Even Taz, who had brutal matches with him, said beating Bam Bam was what made him a star. All these tributes from people who knew him make his lonely death even more heartbreaking. He was surrounded by people who respected him, but he still couldn't overcome his demons. The physical and emotional pain of wrestling had broken him down too much. The truth about Bam Bam Bigelow is that he was exactly what wrestling says it wants. He was innovative, athletic, and charismatic. He could do things that men his size weren't supposed to be able to do. He was a pioneer who changed what people thought was possible in wrestling. But wrestling didn't want to deal with the consequences of what it took to be that innovative. The injuries, the pain, the drugs, the financial instability. Wrestling wanted the show, but it didn't want to take care of the performers who made the show possible. Bam Bam's death wasn't an accident or bad luck. It was the predictable result of an industry that chews up its talent and spits them out. He was used until he was broken, then discarded when he became inconvenient. His addiction and financial problems didn't happen in a vacuum. They happened because wrestling is a business that destroys people's bodies and minds, then acts surprised when those people can't handle normal life. Despite all the tragedy and neglect, Bam Bam Bigelow's legacy lives on with the fans who remember him. They know he was special. They know he deserved better. His influence can be seen in every big man who does high-flying moves today. His spirit lives on in every wrestler who refuses to be limited by what other people think they should be able to do. The industry may have failed him, but the fans never will.